Okay, so here we go. We have been talking about our government and our Constitution, and we need to add some notes into our notebook. And I'm actually going to take 2 pages. I'm going to go across 2 whole pages for this. And so what we've been learning about is that foundation of our government, the foundation of our Constitution. And so we're going to label the top these 7 principles of our government. So go ahead and you can go across 2 whole pages because it is going to take 2 pages for us to take these notes on the 7 principles of our government. And we've been looking at these 7 principles so far. So we're going to just very quickly add them to our notes. I'm going to start here on the left-hand side. So I'll go to the left-hand side and then the right-hand side. So here we go. 7 principles. I'm going to start with the very first one that we've seen within our government and within our colonies. We know that it started with the idea of limited government. Limited government, we have talked about from the beginning. We know when the colonists showed up in America, they knew the idea of limited government. The idea that the government only has power that the Constitution gives. That it can only do what the Constitution says it can do. They can't just do whatever they want. And so to help us remember these principles and these ideas, we think about them in terms of a circle, of a ring. We enter, as the citizens, we enter into what we call a social contract with our government, okay? And think about when 2 people enter into a contract. They enter into a union. They wear a ring, right? That ring symbolizes the strength of that union. And so we have our ring right there for our principle. And so when we look at limited government and we think about limited government, this ring, inside the ring, we know we have a legislative branch, an executive branch, and a judicial branch. But all of the powers of those branches must stay inside the ring. They can't go outside of the ring to do whatever they want. And so therefore, we show these arrows pushing on it saying you have to stay within the powers that you are given. Now, when our founding fathers showed up, they didn't just make up the idea of limited government. They got it from somewhere else. And so we know that this idea of limited government comes from the Magna Carta in 1215. The idea, the rule of law, everybody must follow what is there. You can't just do whatever you want. And so where is this idea of limited government located in the Constitution? It is going to be located in all of it. The whole Constitution is limited government. It is telling us what they are allowed to do. All right, so that is one principle. Here we go. I'm going to draw just a quick line. A second one that we have been able to learn about is the principle of separation of powers. I'm going to actually just use a different color. I like the different colors. You don't have to use the different colors. It's up to you. But I'm going to go ahead and write separation of powers. This is something that we've seen before. We know about it. It's the idea that it creates those 3 branches, and each branch has its own power. They have their own job with their own job, okay? And so if I go ahead and I look right at my circle again, here's my powerful circle. I'm going to know again, okay, I have the legislative, I have the executive, and I have the judicial branch, but they are divided in their powers. Each one has their own job to do. And so this idea, when it came up, it actually wasn't something they thought of. They took it from somebody else. They'd done a lot of research on figuring out what they wanted. And so this idea actually comes from an Enlightenment thinker named Charles de Montesquieu. Ooh, and that is a doozy of a name to spell. Charles de Montesquieu. You gotta put a little bit of in there to make it sound French. So it comes from Charles de Montesquieu, and he gave this idea that, you should separate the powers so nobody becomes too powerful. And so where do we see it? Where is it located? We specifically see it in the constitutions with Article 1, 2, and 3. And that is, of course, our legislative, executive, and judicial branch. All right, we're going to go ahead. That is number 2. Number 3 stays with this idea of separation of powers. It kind of builds upon it with the idea, and I bet you guys know it, of checks and balances. All right, in checks and balances, we have our separation of powers, but it goes even further to say each branch can check or stop the other branches. We have this system in place to make sure that nobody becomes too powerful, to make sure that we don't end up with a tyrant, because that was their fear, was being like England and having that tyrant again. So here is my circle of power, my circle of unity, that agreement we enter within our government. And so once again, here is my legislative, executive, and judicial branch. They are divided into separate powers, but this time we make sure to say, hey, the judicial branch can check the legislative branch. We know that happens with judicial review. The Supreme Court can say that laws are unconstitutional. The judicial branch can also check the executive branch, our president. They can say, hey, acts of the president are unconstitutional. That's not allowed. How does the executive branch check the judicial branch? Well, the president nominates those Supreme Court justices. And then we also see it between executive and legislative. The president is allowed to veto the law. What are some words that if we saw them, we would know, hey, that's checks and balances? Well, if I saw the word veto, I would know it's checks and balances. If I saw the word override, I would know it's checks and balances. If I saw the word review, then I would know it's checks and balances. Those are key words to know, hey, here's how they get to check upon one another. Now, where does it come from? They don't just make it up. They get it from somewhere else, and it actually comes from the same guy, Charles Montesquieu. Charles Montesquieu, he had a lot of great ideas about government and not wanting anybody to become too powerful. And so where do we see this located in? We're going to actually find it within that same spot, which is going to be Articles 1, 2, and 3, where it talks about the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. All right, here we go. The next one, let's draw my line right here. I love the next one because it is all about the people, and it is called popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty is the idea of people power. We are the people and we have the power. Popular sovereignty is people power. It is the people who hold the power. And how do we really hold this power? What do? Well, we vote. We protest. We can do fundraisers. We can support. Okay, we, the people, hold the power. And so if I have my power circle right here, here's my power circle. Okay, how am I going to show that principle? I'm going to say here, is my people power. There's my nice little smiley face. Ooh, need to come up just a little bit. There's my nice little smiley face. That is my people power. We are the ones with the power. Now, where does this come from? They don't just make it up. They borrow it from other people. They were really smart in borrowing ideas from other people to create the best government on earth. And that idea is going to come from a few places. John Locke is one of them. The idea that people have power, the consent of the government. We also saw it with our Puritans in the Mayflower Compact, when they had that idea of democracy and people having a voice in there. All right, where do we find it? Well, we really find it, so I'm going to write located, in the very first 3 words that say we the people. So in the preamble where it says we the people, it starts with the fact, I can't spell people, P-E-O. Let's try that again. P-E-O-P-L-E. We the people. It's right there, making sure that the people have the power. We're also going to find it, and we'll be able to talk about it in Amendment 9, which says people have other rights. The people have the power. They have rights that aren't just listed. So that's Amendment 9. Love popular sovereignty because it's all about the people. All right, here we go. I am moving to the next side on my notebook. Let me move back just a little bit so that you can see the whole page. Let me pull this up just a little. There we go. My next side on my notebook. And we are going to start this one with this idea of republicanism. We live in a democratic republic, that democratic coming from that popular sovereignty that we just talked about, but that republic meaning that we elect representatives to be our voice. Okay, we elect representatives to be our voice. We give them the consent to be our voice, to go up there and to help make laws that we would agree with, to help do things that we want. And so when I have my circle of power right there, there is my circle right here. Here is my representative in the center, because my representative does have some power, but he gets his power from the people. He can't just do whatever he wants. We are always watching him. And we are making sure that he does what we want. We do not have an unlimited representation in the legislative and executive branch. And so they have to run for re-election. And if people don't like what's going on, you can run against them or you cannot vote for them. And so this republic where we elect representatives to be our voice. Now, where did that come from? We should remember going all the way back to the beginning in Jamestown with the House of Burgesses. This idea of representative government. Where are we going to find it located in? Well, we have our Article 1 with our legislative branch and those representatives in the House of Representatives and the Senate. And we can also say, well, it's going to be Article 2 in our executive branch with our president, because the president is a representative of the people. And so if we decide, if that president's running for re-election and the American people decide, we want to change it, then people can vote against them or vote for him if they want to keep it to support them. All right. Our next principle is going to be the principle of individual rights. Okay, individual rights. We are a country founded on our freedoms and our liberties and our rights. And so these are freedoms guaranteed to all, making sure that all people have these freedoms. And so here we are. Here is my power circle right there. There's my power. And so I have inside my power a nice little shield. I never draw a very good shield, but I try because my rights are protected. There is my shield, and it's Bill of Rights. It is protecting my people. My Bill of Rights protect my powers. And so where is this idea coming from? Where do we get it from? Okay, we got to remember that when our colonists came over, they came with ideas from England. And so one of the ideas was the English Bill of Rights, and the idea that we have rights as English citizens. And we adopted that then later at the convention, where our anti-federalists argued for the addition of a Bill of Rights. George Mason saying, hey, we need a Bill of Rights. We're not going to sign the Constitution until we have it. And so they really fought hard for it. And thank goodness, because we have a Bill of Rights to protect us today. Now, that becomes easy then, because where is it located? Well, individual rights are located in the Bill of Rights, which are, of course, going to be the first 10 amendments, which get added to the Constitution after it is passed. And that's why they're called an amendment, because they get added to the Constitution for the American people. All right, our last principle is going to be the principle of federalism, because we've been talking about the federal government, but we also need to recognize that we have state governments and that we want to make sure that the states have power too. So federalism is the sharing and dividing of power between, that's my abbreviation for between, the states and federal government. Okay? And so we see that, if I want to get a driver's license, it is a Texas driver's license. Okay? That's not federal, that's a Texas driver's license. But we also have federal laws and federal rules and federal regulations to follow too. Making sure that we have schools built. That comes federally, but then within the state, they are controlled by the state. That's why we take the STAR test, the State of Texas Academic Assessment of Readiness. All right, here we go. So here is my circle of power. And we said it is the sharing of power between our federal government and our state government, but it is also the dividing of power between both of them. Now, what makes federalism so unique is it is so obviously written in the Constitution because it is Amendment number 10. Amendment 10 is all about the states having power. So we actually do two things with the circle. We show the federal government divided with the state government, and we give it the number 10. We put a 1 right in front of it. Okay, where does this idea come from? They don't just make it up. They want to make sure that our states have power, and so they go back to the original American document, that Declaration of Independence, not forgetting that the king had taken away our power. And who really talks about state powers at the convention? Well, it's going to be our anti-federalists, making sure that the states have more power. And then where do we see this located at? These state powers are going to show up in Amendment 10. And Amendment 10 tells us anything not given to the federal government goes to the states.